Hi everyone, my name's Britton Klein, Ad Sales Manager, and welcome to this week's edition of Marketing Minutes by Scuba Diving Industry Magazine.
And I'm William Klein, the publisher. Thanks for joining us. And if you're a dive company out there and you'd like to be on this show, reach out to Britton and I. We'd love to chat with you. So
That's right.
Who we got lined up for today?
Yes, so our special guests today, we have two, Mandy Normal and Bradley Mart of Coral Reef Alliance. Mandy and Bradley, welcome to the show.
Hi, everybody.
Hello.
Thanks for being here. Coral's done a lot of really great things in the Caribbean and all over the world. So it's going to be a great show to learn about some of their efforts today.
Totally. I'm super excited. But Mandy and Bradley, just to jump right into things, could you tell us a little bit about how Coral got started, its vision, and how you both came to work with Coral?
Yeah, so I'll just jump in. So as a backdrop, Coral just celebrated its 30th anniversary in 2024. So kind of got started in the 90s. Yeah, we've been around quite a long time. I personally didn't get involved until the 2000s when Coral came onto my radar. I'm based up here in the San Francisco Bay Area, and Coral was nearby, and I was anxious to get involved in some way and with an NGO in the field, and it worked out that they were close. In 2012, I learned about the Coral Council, which is not the full board, but kind of a subset of interested people that love the ocean and the coral reefs, and came on to the Coral Council about them. So that's how I got involved.
That's awesome.
And I studied coral reefs in Australia in the early 2000s. The first reef I ever saw actually was the Great Barrier Reef.
Oh, gee.
Which
Wow.
quite literally took my breath away. And as I began to understand the growing impacts of climate change to the outer reefs, I was studying the increasing storm intensity and wave energy on the outer reef systems, is when I realized I want to dedicate my life to protecting coral reefs. So for the past 5 years, I've been on the front lines of the fundraising and storytelling side of the Coral Reef Alliance.
Wow.
What's interesting is that the solutions to saving coral reefs exist, and the science shows us what's working, but what's really needed to accelerate the solutions is the funding. And then the storytelling also matters just as much. The coral reefs obviously don't have faces and they don't have voices. So my team is really out there trying to speak for them and show people why they matter, that they that they're critical to protecting. And so what the Coral Reef Alliance is doing is we're making sure that coral reefs can adapt to climate change by addressing the main threats that they're facing. Our vision is a world where coral reefs are protected, they're healthy, and they're adapting to a warming ocean. So we're really aiming to be a global leader in delivering measurable results. And for us, that means a lot of things: clean water, healthy fish populations. And our hope is not just wishful thinking, it's really based in science.
That's amazing. Wow.
Fascinating. So we take a very solid stance with our magazine and our podcasts on protecting the environment. Obviously, without coral reefs, we don't have a great dive product. So it's essential to the survival of our industry as a whole. And such, our sustainability editor, Dr. Alex Brilski, has been a voice in the wilderness out there for quite a while, and really does a good job of trying to explain to professionals the complex problem that we have, because it's not a simple problem. So speaking of the problem, can you talk a little about some of your current projects or maybe past projects that Coral's been involved with?
Sure, I can start. And Bradley, feel free to join in on this. First, I'll start with the work that we've been doing the longest is strengthening and expanding well-managed protected areas. We've been doing this work for 30 years, partnering really closely with communities to not only designate new protected areas, but strengthen the management of existing areas. And that includes ensuring long-term financial sustainability, so creating user fee systems and ways that the community and tourists can give back to protected areas. And we know these protected areas are needed so that there's strong fish and healthy fisheries for the coral reefs. We've done this work in Fiji, Palau, Bonaire, and Honduras, anywhere really where communities and governments are willing to come in and work alongside of us, and where coral reefs are really needing a boost in these times. And then the second big focus for us for threat reduction is reducing land-based pollution. A little over a decade ago, we realized that the protected area work was just not enough, that even the best managed reef is not going to survive if polluted water is flowing into it every day. And so this is untreated or poorly treated wastewater from homes and businesses and hotels in these communities. A major issue, and not only in developing countries like Honduras, but also in places like Hawaii, where you would think there's, funding and infrastructure for these projects. So we're really focused on systems level work. We're not growing and outplanting baby corals because those baby corals aren't going to exist in conditions where there isn't protection and there isn't clean water for them. Bradley, what would you add?
Well, we do a lot of work, for example, in Roatán, and one of the projects that I was involved in as part of the council a number of years ago was that, there's been a marine protected area for the whole Bay Islands, but on Roatán, only 3/4 of that had, rangers who were patrolling and protecting from overfishing or fishing out of season. And so, one of the things that Coral did was go out and do a huge fundraiser for what would have been the southeast quadrant of the island, which was the only part that didn't really have any protection. And we raised funds for a ranger for 2 years, a boat, all of the operational, and it's been very successful in the last 7 or 8 years now. So that's one example where we have gone and done something that had a real impact on the coral reefs.
That's amazing.
That's truly amazing.
And speaking about impact, for our retailers watching and all the dive pros out there, how can they get involved, especially watching and supporting Coral with their group travel programs?
This is a question that we've been wrestling with for about a year, is how do we get more deeply connected and involved with this group of people that care so deeply about coral reefs. And we have a few things on the horizon. We're about to launch a volunteer program later this year that will have multiple ways to engage, including helping to share stories and photos of dive and reef experiences to help our team make decisions. And also, we want to build out a playbook for people who want to host their own type of awareness or fundraising event, whether that's a dive shop talk or a community screening or a small dinner with friends. We'll be able to equip anyone with the tools to make it a really meaningful experience. And then I would say the other two pathways, use your voice as a part of the dive community. We have many trusted partners on the ground. That's a really important part of how we work. We have Alliance in our name for a reason, because we have this huge network of partners. They all have volunteer programs and needs on the ground to support reef positive outcomes. So anytime you're traveling, connecting with our team to support our work happening in places like Maui and Cozumel and Roatán. And then thirdly, if you're part of a company, a dive operator or a brand that really depends on healthy oceans, we do have a corporate partnership program. We work with businesses to align our impact with really authentic storytelling and measurable results, so that a business's commitment to the reefs is, more than just association with our logo. It's real change for coral reefs.
And I would just add also, Mandy and I were talking about this yesterday, that, in many ways, the dive community is our eyes and ears on the ground as to what's happening with, not with eyes and ears on coral reefs.
Right.
And so it's really an opportunity for them to also come to us and say, hey, we have this project in mind, or we want to do this for this reef system. And there are ways that we can support, even if we're not there on the reef with the divers or with the dive company or the resort or whatever, whether it's providing intelligence or guidance or plugging us into any one of the part of the alliance of the Coral Reef Alliance.
It's
Is that fair to Andy? That's
yeah.
I have to thank our good friend and writer and contributor Gil Zeimer, because he actually wrote an article about your efforts in our February issue, which should be in everybody's mailboxes by the next day or so, if it's not there already. But it is online at scubadivingindustry.com. You can read the entire article. It's a great piece about coral. And speaking of some of your efforts, I was fascinated by what I read about how that you've tackled the Mesoamerican Reef system, which is the world's second largest collective reef, from what I understand. maybe second or third compared to the barrier reef or the reef in the Bahamas, and of course the Great Barrier Reef. But can you talk about, because you mentioned it a little bit, Bradley, earlier, but some of those efforts specifically about how you've trained local operators and trained people within that area. And for those that aren't familiar, we've got a map of the Mesoamerican Reef system, which stretches basically from the tip of Mexico, just above Cancun, all the way into Honduras. So it's a massive area too.
I think I would hand it back to Mandy. We have so many boots on the ground right now in the Mesoamerican Reef. There's a lot more there that I've been involved in. I was involved a while ago on that particular project, but Mandy's overseeing a whole bunch of opportunities that are developing right now for us.
Yeah, the Mesoamerican Reef is very interesting. It's very under-resourced. It definitely not as much funding or attention as the Great Barrier Reef, and so that's one of the reasons why we're deeply embedded and making sure that we're making a difference here for coral reefs. The 4 countries that are involved are highly engaged in working with us to train people on the ground. And our training, I would say it goes beyond training. We're providing technical assistance to communities and helping them navigate challenges, helping them unlock a diverse range of funding for projects that will help with their wastewater projects and protected areas. And then we've also worked a lot with communities in supporting dive shop operations, making sure that local communities have a pathway for local community members who are fishers who can also become divers. And those types of programs have been kind of deeply embedded in our work for a long time. We also used to have a lot of educational programs where we would talk to dive shops about the importance of sustainable diving and making sure that people know when they're going out to a coral reef, what a coral reef actually is. It's not a rock and it's not a plant. These are animals and they need our protection. So that's been a really important part of our work. We're sometimes coming into places and filling important data gaps, bringing in scientific research, and sometimes it's just helping people fundraise for their own work to protect coral reefs. So there's many ways we're supporting the local on the boots on the ground efforts where coral reefs are struggling.
But it's also sedimentation management. It can be planting. It can be wastewater management. We're doing lots of stuff. Some of the sedimentation stuff in Hawaii, but in the Mesoamerican Reef, wastewater helping Roatán would be a great example of where we helped develop on the west end wastewater treatment plant that stopped the dumping of I don't know how many millions of gallons of sewage into the water.
Wow, that's great.
So we're working very much from very grassroots all the way up to the top political groups in all the countries that we're involved in, but particularly in the Mesoamerican Reef, the group of 4 countries that Mandy.
Very, very cool stuff. I did some missionary work in Guatemala a few years back, so that area is very, dear to my heart. So really, really cool to see your guys' efforts out there.
True.
But in closing, just to kind of shift gears here a little bit, could you tell our audience a little bit about your favorite dive site or destination and why?
I would jump in and say I was diving a couple of times. I've been to the Philippines. There's an area called El Nido, and I think my favorite dive of my life was going into the bay there by myself and just sitting on the bottom of the water, sitting in the bottom 30 feet down for an hour while this aquarium just swam around me.
So rad.
That's amazing.
I just sat.
Mm-hmm. Mandy?
Oh gosh, that is a tough question. I would have to say my very favorite is where I learned to dive, and that was in Botany Bay in Sydney, Australia. It's temperate diving, which means there were a lot of weedy sea dragons and giant cuttlefish and octopus. And I really love the challenge of a nighttime shore dive in Botany Bay. But I'll admit, as I get older, the boat diving is more appealing. And I've had some really great boat dives recently in Roatán. So yeah, I would say those are my answers.
Those
Super cool.
Pretty cool places. So
absolutely.
Thank you, Mandy and Bradley, for being here and telling everybody about your efforts. And if you're a retailer out there, reach out to them, reach out to Coral. I'm sure there's ways you can get involved. And they said they got some new programs coming online to work specifically with retailers. So that should be a really cool thing.
Mm-hmm.
Britton, who do we have lined up for our next show?
So our next guest will be Robert and Bob from Key West, talking about the diving the dry tortugas. So it should make for a pretty awesome conversation.
Which is really cool. Set of islands, and people really don't know a lot about. Evidently, diving spectacular there. So
that's right.
Anyhow, any closing thoughts you both might have on behalf of Coral?
Just thank you so much. You're right. We need everyone and anyone to care about coral reef. So please reach out to us, join our alliance, and keep in touch.
Thank you very mumuch, William and Britton. There's a great lawsuit that about do trees have standing? It was a Supreme Court. And the answer was yes, they do, but so do coral reefs. Coral reefs have standing, and they have it through the Coral Reef Alliance and everybody involved. Thank you.
We couldn't agree more.
That's a great way to end the show. So again, if you're out there and you want to see any of these other shows, go to scubadivingindustry.com, as well as you can see all of our issues, but also all of our podcasts. So Britton, I think it's going to wrap it us for today, don't you think?
That's right. We will see you guys next time.
Thanks again. Bye.